Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. We're pink, not purple
Oh,
tonight.
Christmas
Yeah.
present. I love
I
it.
got purple on tonight.
Goes with gray.
I'll let you get seated, Counselor, and then we'll start.
Moving as fast as I can. Good evening. Dave.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. As mayor, I hereby call to order the meeting of the Laconia City Council scheduled for December 14th, 2015. As always, we'll begin our meeting tonight with a salute to the American flag. Please rise and join Councilor Armin Bolick in reciting the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance
For the record, I will note that the minutes to tonight's meeting are being kept by Deputy City Clerk Stacy Anders, and I would ask her to please call the roll.
Here.
Here.
Present.
present.
Here.
Here. Let the record show that 5 councilors are present tonight, and that constitutes a quorum. First thing on our agenda tonight are a couple of presentations, and for that, I'm going to come around to the front of the room if I can. This first presentation here tonight is an annual one, and one that is an exciting time and moment for members of the City Council, because for 28 years now, we have been presenting the Deborah Bionars Memorial Award for outstanding service to the children and youth in the Lakes region in memory of police officer Deborah Bionars. The late Officer Bionars served the city and its youth with uncommon devotion, dedication, and distinction during her 9 years with the police department before her death in 1987. Each year, a committee comprised of one city councilor, one member of the police department, and a member of the school board select an individual to be recognized for this award based on nominations from members of the community. The award honors a member of the community who has enlivened and enriched the lives of young people. Now, we're going to award this tonight and announce, and we always try to build in a little suspense to this. I like this part. Not only because it's fun, but for those of you sitting here tonight, you're all wondering, well, who is this they're talking about? And as I start listing off the achievements of this person and the reason for offering this award tonight, it will become quickly a word to most of you in this room, and eventually to all but one of you in this room, that we're not talking about you. But one of you will come to the realization that you're it, and we're talking specifically about you. So this is fun. The recipient of this year's award is a special person who is more than deserving of recognition for her work with the youth of our community. Anyone who is familiar with her involvement with Laconia youth, all right, we already eliminated half the room, right? With her involvement with Laconia's youth would say the award is long overdue. However, if she were asked, the recipient would be the first person to say she is not worthy of receiving such an award. The recipient honored this evening is well respected by her staff as well as by the administration and faculty of the school system. She is the first one to assist any of the teachers and staff who need special help with their students. This year's honoree has managed the lunch program at our middle school for many years. I'm assuming there are very few of you who have done that. The number of students partaking in the lunch program has risen year after year because of her efforts and the efforts of her staff to provide good quality, delicious meals that meet the requirements of the national standards. Her interactions with students are exemplary and include providing cooking classes and counseling for students struggling with personal issues. She refers to her students as cherubs and often will take a child in need under her wing. She invites all of her students to return to see her after they have moved on from the middle school, and many of them do. She visits with them, and they always get a cookie. The Lakes region is fortunate to have this year's recipient as a member of our community. She has made a tremendous positive impact on countless children and is dedicated to continuing to make a difference in the lives of our younger citizens. In recognition of this year's honoree's outstanding commitment to the youth of our city, I am very proud to present the 2015 Deborah Bionars Award to Diane Ouellette.
My staff comes up with this too. Come on, guys.
Let's turn the plate around here so let's turn it around so people can see Carol. Two more. Look at them all. There you go.
Nice job, ladies.
Congratulations. Let me give you the proclamation too. That is yours also. Well, that was worth the suspense, don't you think? Yeah, that was great. Okay, next up here, I have in my hand, and you'll wonder why, a signed copy of the congressional record for the U.S. House of Representatives for the date of Tuesday, December 1st, 2015. And on that date, read into the congressional record for that date by our Congressman, Frank C. Ginta of the 1st District of New Hampshire, is a resolution, and as a part of the official congressional record. And before I read this, I would like to ask several people to join me here at the microphone who this directly relates to, and that would be Councilors Armin Bolduc and Bob Hamill and Ernie Bolduc. Is Ernie here tonight? There he is. Would you come forward, please? All right, this type's kind of small. I better get my glasses out here. This isn't very long, but I'm going to read it because it's very important. From the congressional record dated December 1st of this year. Oops. Thank you. I'll have a young guy bend over and pick up my pen. Right? Okay, so Mr. Ginta rose on the floor of the House of Representatives and said, "Mr. Speaker, I rise today to recognize the 40th anniversary of Laconia Christmas Village in Laconia, New Hampshire. I am pleased to join with the City of Laconia and its residents in commemorating this wonderful event and holiday tradition for Granite Staters in the Lakes region of New Hampshire. This is a great achievement as the annual Christmas Village is organized and run by total volunteers in Laconia, who not only help build the actual village and attractions, but work together to provide all the resources needed to put on this yearly event. The event is free to the public and sees roughly 2,500 children come through to see Santa Claus and receive a Christmas present, and for some children, this is their only holiday celebration. Volunteers not only help in the preparation of this event, but help with entertainment, providing refreshments, and welcoming families from across the region to the city. With the goal of providing a family-friendly event to usher in the holiday season, these volunteers and the community have come together beautifully to highlight the wonder and merriment of the Christmas season. joined with the efforts of local volunteers who give their time and resources to make the village a success. This is a testament to the strong sense of community and support this event has had in Laconia over the past 40 years. I am proud to join with my fellow Granite Staters in recognizing the 40th anniversary of Laconia Christmas Village and wish them all the best in future years. Frank Ginta, Member of Congress. And I don't think I need to tell all of you that the three gentlemen that I am proud to stand with this evening and give this award to, this copy of resolution to, are and have been the backbone of Christmas Village, which we all appreciate so much. So for them, I'm going to present them not only with a copy of the resolution of the congressional record for that day, but we also have a ceremonial signed copy of the congressional resolution here for display at Christmas Village or wherever you gentlemen find appropriate. Okay? This is basically a copy of the resolution itself with a picture of the United States Capitol on it. So Ernie, I will give that to you if you can be the trustee of that.
Okay, thank you.
And on behalf of all your fellow Laconians, I say thank you and congratulations.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Probably also worth noting is that there's only one here dressed in work clothes.
And which one would that be? All right, thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Ernie, let me give you this too.
Here.
Thank you.
I would ask the clerk for the record to note that Councilor Littman has joined us, and that means all 6 councilors are present, and I would also have her note for the record that the council is joined at the head table tonight by City Manager Scott Myers and City Finance Officer Donna Witteman. Our first order of official business here is acceptance of minutes of previous meeting. Tonight, we have before us the regular meeting minutes of November 23rd, 2015. Those were distributed to the council on November 25th. No corrections were received at the clerk's office, so unless there is any objection on the part of council or corrections to be made at this time, and I hear none, I'm to declare that the minutes of November 23rd, 2015 as submitted by the clerk are adopted. Consent and action calendar. We have one item on the consent and action calendar tonight, and that is our annual, there's a memorandum in your package tonight, our annual authorization for boat dealers in the city of Laconia to act as agents of the city in terms of accepting boat registrations, and that would be Paugus Bay Marina, Thurston's Marina, Channel Marine, Irwin Marina, and Lakeport Landing. Motion would be in order to approve that list as submitted.
So moved.
Moved by Councilor Bolduc. Is there a second? Councilor Doyle seconds that motion. Any discussion? All those in favor of authorizing the boat dealers to act as agents for the city, please raise a hand.
Aye.
We have 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion passes. Citizen comments for matters not on the agenda. This is the appropriate time in the evening for anyone in our audience who wishes to address the council on any matter that is not on tonight's agenda. Is there anyone that applies to tonight? Something that's not on tonight's agenda? Is anybody moving? So we'll move on. We don't have any interviews tonight. Don't have any public hearings. Mayor's report. We already talked about Christmas Village, and we haven't had a meeting since we had Christmas Village, so that was very appropriate, and our usual thank you to not only the Bolduc brothers and Bob Hamill, but to all the volunteers who make that such an exemplary event and play in such an important role in children's lives in our area. and one only has to be there for a minute to look into the eyes of the small children who are there to appreciate what they have done and understand what the pay is for all those volunteers that do this year after year. While on that general subject, I'd also like to congratulate, speaking of volunteers, all of the dozens and dozens and dozens of volunteers who are annually involved in the what is now known as Greater Lakes Region Children's Auction. For those of you who are not aware, I would imagine most are, the auction concluded on Saturday afternoon this year with a total raised of, rounded off, $470,000. That's an amazing total. And among those volunteers this year, I'll point out there are so many unsung heroes, some of whom are obvious and everybody knows, but dozens and dozens more who work behind the scenes to pull that auction off, including a couple of renegade cameramen this year who were there several nights this past week, and Councilor Hamill was one of those. And someone else he knows at this table was the other one. But we had a good time there and sharing the camaraderie and the common goal. And I also want to give a special shout out to one of our fellow residents, and that's Alan Beadle. The total raised this year from what he calls Pub Mania, an event that feeds into the children's auction total, was an almost unbelievable $244,000. Raised theoretically in 24 hours, although we all know that many of the people who participate in that are actively out raising money, holding up their events all year long. And for a group of people like that, under Alan's leadership, to be able to raise $244,000, $250,000, is just an amazing volunteer effort to me, and our hats off to all the people who volunteer for that effort, and especially to our fellow citizen, Alan Beadle, and I say thank you to Alan and all of those volunteers. Lastly, I would like to mention that we had several visits this past year as a council, to the issue of zoning in the Weirs Beach area of Laconia. And we're going to get back to that issue after the first of the year. And what is happening is, rather than trying to get everybody together on a single night, what the city manager and I have agreed to as an agenda item is for 4 consecutive meetings. Beginning with the first meeting in January, we're going to set aside time each of those 4 meeting evenings for people who wish to come and offer testimony to City Council about the general issue of zoning in the Weirs. So that if they can't make it on one particular night, hopefully they can make it on another night. So it'll just be an ongoing agenda item. And any citizen of the city or any interested party who wishes to address the council on the general issue of zoning in the Weirs Beach area of the city is welcome to attend that night. And specifically, one of the things we would like some input on is the zoning in the Route 3, Route 11B corridor that runs from the Meredith Town line southward to the old Surf Coaster property. So if you draw a straight line down those 2 roadways connecting those 2 areas, and to that end, the city manager and I have identified about 25, I think it was, significant property owners in that corridor. And they are all going to receive a personal letter from the city advising them of what's going on here, and asking them to pick one of those 4 nights and come forward and offer testimony and their opinions on what. That does not in any way preclude anyone else from joining in that discussion, but specifically, we wanted to make sure that those landowners, and if any of the members of the council have anyone else they would like to see given a special written invitation to testify one of those nights, please inform the city manager and we'll add those to the list. So that's the 2 meetings in January and the 2 meetings in February. Okay, moving on. Citizen request to comment on current agenda items. This is the appropriate time on the agenda for anyone who wishes to address the council on any matter that is on tonight's agenda. And let me point out that I know one of the items of major interest tonight is the issue of the downtown parking garage, and I believe with the consent of the council, we would allow input from the public on that particular issue at the appropriate time. So why don't we, if we can, we will reserve that time to comment. I know the people from Genesis Behavioral Health are here tonight, and we'd like to hear from them and perhaps some others of you as well. So with the exception of the downtown parking garage issue, is there anyone in the audience tonight who would like to address the council on any other matter before the council tonight? Oh, okay. Committee reports, I don't think we have any that I'm aware of. Liaison reports, are there any counselors that have liaison reports tonight?
Oh, yeah.
Counselor Hamel on fire station?
Sure. We had a meeting on Friday and to pay some bills, and the construction of the fire station is going along pretty good. The renovation of the old section of the building is proceeding. They found a few things that had to be addressed, but not to a drastic level. So they're looking for completion still at the end of this month. As you noted when you were driving by it, the outside exterior is pretty much done now. The inside on the new part is just got a few punch list things, but it's going good. And like I said, we should be getting the full occupancy of that at end of this month, beginning of January, the latest.
I assume at some point we're going to be planning some sort of a dedication ceremony or something?
We do. We will be doing an open house and ribbon cutting for the renovations in the new part, and also looking to hold the council's goal-setting session over there in the EOC room and take advantage of that great room for us, for all of you and department heads.
Well, I won't have far to go for that then, will I?
Jump the fence.
If I could jump the fence, I'll be all set. Okay, we're up to the city manager's report, and the chair recognizes Mr. Myers.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Included in your packet, as we do for the first meeting of the month, you have two reports. I'll start with the economic development report. Unemployment for Laconia, the county, a couple large cities of Concord and Manchester, and the state as a whole still continue to trend very favorably versus the same October period of 2014. So that's certainly a positive sign all around the state. On the back side of the report, the back page, you also see that we track the annual Consumer Price Index Urban, which is one of the components of our tax cap calculation. So basically, it's how inflation runs during the year is one of the calculating items into our formula for what is allowed to be raised under the tax cap. We ran October at 0.2% increase in that CPIU, and annualized to date, we are still at zero. So 10 months through the year, we're showing a zero rate of inflation. So unless something significant changes for November, the number should be out in another couple of days, maybe by the end of this week. And then the December number will be out in the middle to latter part of January. But we'll be looking for a very low annualized number by the time all 12 months come into play. Moving on to the financial and operational trends, the very first item on the top of that report ties into our new construction value off of building permits that have been pulled, and that ties into the assessing year, which runs April 1st to March 31st. Year to date, we're at $27.5 million. Comparable to a year ago at this time, we were at $23.1 million, so running a couple million ahead. We are coming obviously into what is traditionally the slower time of year for building permits being pulled. Last year, the number we used was $29 million was the 12-month gain in construction value. Again, tying in with the economy showing some momentum. The number 2 years ago at this time was 14 million, so basically doubling of construction value permits where we are in this year versus 2 years ago. You've got the call data for police and fire. Both departments continue to be very busy. A lot of calls going on, and the breakdown is there on what those calls entail. Property tax bills went out the Friday after Thanksgiving, and they are due December 28th. So we've seen a steady stream of people coming in already to be paying property tax bills. The other large revenue source that we get other than property tax collection is motor vehicle registration. We track that on the bottom of page 2. And again, we had increased that number by $150,000 this year over prior fiscal year. So the new number that we're projecting for revenue this year is $2.325 million. To date, we're about $1,050,000, which puts us at about 45% of target. To be on track, we should have been around 41 or 42% of target. So we try to go conservative with our revenue estimates, and we are running ahead of schedule there. Don't have any other major items to point out to you. No real changes in the impact fees. Nothing new has been spent from any of the trust balances for the accrued leave account, the winter maintenance, health insurance stabilization. All of those are where they were last month. So I'd be happy to entertain any questions any of you may have.
Any questions for the city manager? Councilor Hamel.
Yes, Scott, is there any progress on the grievances that are here?
As listed there, we've had one grievance that we could not resolve. We went to arbitration, so that's listed there. That was, I think, about 4 or 5 weeks ago now. We were actually expecting the response, I thought by now, checking in with Paula Baumel, our personnel specialist, late last week. We had not received it. So I would expect that any time. The other two, one we have not been able to come to agreement. That looks like it's going to arbitration. The one dealing with the co-pays on the medical, we are trying to come to a meeting of minds of that, and I'm cautiously optimistic that we will do that.
Okay. Also, on the overtime report, under the fire department, that's starting to trend more than last year right now. The ambulance is under, but the fire portion of that is 24,000 ahead of what last year's figure was. Is there anybody looking into that, do you know, or?
Most of that was due to time that was due to them for vacation or personal days, and we actually had a higher number this fiscal year in July and August that were using vacation days than did during the comparable period the year before. So we think as the 12 months for the year cycle out, that will flatten out, but there was definitely a higher use of vacation time these summer months versus the prior year. So it was a little spike there, but again, we do expect that to flatten out as the year goes along.
Okay.
And that's something that the chief and I do talk about regularly and is being monitored.
Okay. Thank you, Scott.
Any other questions or comments for the city manager? Okay, thank you. We'll move on to new business. First item under new business tonight is a request to hold public hearings regarding community development block grants. To present the findings of the CDBG-funded Level 2 ASHRAE energy audit at the Scott and Williams Building at 22 Stratford Street in Laconia. Is Ms. Lane with us this evening?
I don't see you here, Mr. Mayor, so I'm thinking we can get the update of the findings. As you recall, that was the $12,000 energy or planning grant that we applied for the community development block grants for the property the mayor just mentioned, to look into what energy efficiencies and improvements could be made in that building, similar to what was done in the tavern about in the last year and a half on behalf of the Housing Authority. So Ms. Lane was going to give an update as to the findings there, and that ties into the second piece in which you're being asked to refer those items to a public hearing in 2 weeks, which would tie into applying for the $500,000 CDBG grant to go ahead and perform those energy improvements. So we certainly will get to the second component, but I don't think that should necessarily preclude you tonight from moving the other two public hearings forward to December 28th.
Okay, let me first of all, any questions about what we're talking about here specifically? So a motion has been prepared for us, and let me read that motion, and we can either question at that time or someone can move to put it on the floor. The motion has been drafted reads as follows. I move to schedule a public hearing during the regular council meeting on December 28, 2015, regarding a proposed application to the Community Development Finance Authority for up to $500,000 in community development block grant funds for energy improvements to the Scott and Williams Building at 22 Stratford Street in Laconia. Would anyone care to put that motion on the floor?
So moved.
Counselor Bear makes the motion. Can I have a second, please? Counselor Hamel is the second. Any discussion?
How old are these
Counselor
buildings? How old are these buildings right now?
I'm sorry?
How old are these buildings right now
tavern.
after the reconstruction, after they've done
Like
this?
2 Stratford Street is the
You're talking about the old,
Laconia Shoe.
Yeah,
Oh, Laconia Street.
yeah.
It's the old
Do we know?
Laconia Shoe building.
Oh, Scott and Williams.
we're talking about the Scott and Williams Building at Normandin Square.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And they just recently underwent a redevelopment 4 or 5 years ago.
Well, more than that now, probably close to 10, but
Time
Is
flies.
it closer to 10?
yeah. I would say.
Okay. I'm just asking the question whether it's a little premature or poor planning to be taking this up now in this fashion, and I guess the answer...
Well, I'm assuming someone involved here, Donna Lane, who is the grant administrator, I thought she was going to be here tonight, but presumably she'll be at the next meeting and you could
Okay.
ask her that.
Okay.
Any other questions or comments?
If I could just offer one thing for Councilor Bound's question, this would be an application to the CDBG program, which would then be reviewed on somewhat of a competitive basis. So if it was deemed not to be warranted or lacking as far as the rankings of other eligible projects, it may not get funded at that point. But certainly, through the $12,000 planning grant, it was determined that there were enough efficiencies that an investment of this amount would have a payback time in a reasonable period.
Okay, thank you.
Counselor Lippman.
If I'm not mistaken, and I may be, that Laconia Housing Authority has interests in that building as well.
They do.
So I think in terms of the city and its energy costs through that authority, we have an interest in seeing that happen, if it's worthwhile.
So what we're doing tonight is simply scheduling the public hearing for our next meeting. And then- Any other comments? All right, let's vote then on scheduling this public hearing. All those in favor of scheduling the public hearing on December 28th, please raise a hand. We have 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion carries, and the public hearing is scheduled. We need a second motion, and we've been through this before, and I think we all understand it, that connected to these community development block grant applications is to schedule for public input regarding residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan that's required by the federal government in case anyone is going to be put out of their home because of typically that does not happen, but that's what the public hearing is
Not
about.
with this type of project, it won't. It could on a larger rehab, but on this particular type of
could.
project, it would not be occurring. But it is, you're right, it is a requirement to hold that public
So this is
hearing.
a federal requirement that we also hold the second hearing, which we've done before. So the motion would read as follows. I move to schedule a public hearing during the regular council meeting on December 28, 2015 regarding the residential anti-displacement and relocation assistance plan for 22 Stratford Street in Laconia.
So moved.
Moved by Counselor Hamel, seconded by Counselor Bear. Any discussion of that motion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. I have 6 votes in the affirmative, and that motion also carries, and that public hearing is also scheduled. Okay, next up on the agenda is the first reading of a resolution relative to the acceptance of donated property by the Lionel L. Labonte Revocable Trust of 2011 for use with Phase 2 of the WOW Trail, and to schedule a public hearing for December 28, 2015 during the regular council meeting. And I believe I saw Mrs. Gandini here tonight. Would you care to come forward? I know you have this in your packets, but the executive director of the WOW Trail is with us tonight, and she can explain what this is all about.
Yes, this is just, as we spoke about at the planning board meeting, it's, they're in the railroad right-of-way where we're building Phase 2. There's a shed that's of historical significance for the corridor, and so we needed to go around it or figure out some other way to work. And the family of the late Lionel Labonte was generous enough to donate that parcel of land. So this here is the city choosing to hopefully accept that donation of land for
This is the family that
continuation.
owns Stratum
Stratum
Tire.
Tire.
Right.
Mhm.
So it's part of the Stratum Tire property in downtown Laconia. And it will reroute the WOW Trail around those two sheds that are in the current right-of-way. So we're going to be asked to accept title as a donation from the Labonte family to that 2,800 square feet, I believe it is.
Just a little
2,850
under.
square feet. Okay, so all we're doing tonight is approving this on first reading and scheduling on a second motion, public hearing on this matter for our next meeting. Any questions while we have Ms. Gandini up here? Counselor Littman?
Are there any added costs to the city by taking this land?
No, actually, it's a cost savings in the sense of, or for us from a WOW Trail perspective of, we were pursuing possibly moving the sheds and otherwise, and that would have involved some expensive archaeological studies because the corridor is historical. So this is actually a generous gift that we're grateful to receive. So.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Okay, the appropriate first motion would be to approve on first reading a resolution relative to acceptance of donated property by the Lionel L. Labonte Revocable Trust of 2011 for use with Phase 2 of the WOW Trail. That's Resolution 2015-25. Someone make a motion for that on first reading, please. Counselor Hamel, is there a second? Counselor Littman, any discussion? All those in favor of adopting that resolution on first reading, please raise a hand. We have 6 votes in the affirmative, and that passes. Next, we need to schedule a public hearing, and the proper motion would be to move to schedule a public hearing on December 28, 2015, regarding the acceptance of donated property by the Lionel L. Labonte Revocable Trust of 2011 for use of Phase 2 of the WOW Trail. Motion, please. Counselor Bounds makes the motion, seconded by, I have 2, so we'll go with Counselor Doyle on this one, seconding the motion. Any discussion of that motion to schedule a public hearing? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative. That resolution is also adopted, and the public hearing has been scheduled for our next meeting.
Mr. Mayor, if I could, did we waive the first reading and just do the reading by title only, just to take the council vote on a third vote there?
No, we did not, and that's my fault. I apologize for that. Does that need to be done on both of them, or just the
No, just one is fine.
one?
Just the first time around.
Just
Okay.
waive the reading by title only.
So backtracking a little bit, we need, for the record, by Rule 29F1, we need to move the reading of the entire resolution in its entirety and to read by title only. Would somebody please bail me out and make that? Counselor Lippman, seconded by Counselor Hamel. Okay, this is the bail the mayor out of a parliamentary faux pas resolution. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6-0, and we have waived the reading of the entire resolution. Thank you. Thank you for calling that
I
to
think
my
we should
attention.
take a second vote. Do we need to do that?
Okay, next up is a request to refer rezoning of parcels belonging to White Oaks Road LLC 1 and 2 to the planning board. This has to do with the former Surf Coaster property that most of us would refer to on White Oaks Road at the intersection of Endicott Street East. And for details, I recognize the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As the mayor referenced earlier in his comments about the rezoning issue going on in the Weirs, you'll recall that there was a comprehensive package brought to the council back on May 11th of 2015. This particular parcel, or these two parcels, were actually a part of that rezoning. Since that is tabled, we need to ask the council if they want to separate that from the entire zoning package, because with land use zoning, you can't go in and pick and choose which pieces you want to act upon. You need to act on the package collectively, up or down. So this is referring to those two Surf Coaster parcels. As it says in the memo, and if you look at the map, those two lots actually cover 3 different zones. The property owner has requested that we ask the planning board to revisit this and recommend zoning to the commercial resort zone for both of those lots which make up of this parcel. He indicates that there's interest in the property, and there's just a little hesitancy on the part of a few when they talk about variances or the mixed zoning within the lots there going forward. So tonight, this would be a request to have the planning board review that, take that under consideration with a vote and public hearing, bring it back to the council after the planning board has acted on it. We would expect if you have acted affirmatively on this tonight and the planning board did the same thing, there's no reason to believe they wouldn't, since it was part of the overall package that came to you. It would come back to the council probably sometime in late January for your final vote on that. And I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Doesn't this
Counselor
come
Bear.
Doesn't this come under what we're going to be doing for the month of January, reviewing the Weirs zoning period? And it includes, I believe, it goes up to that parcel.
It does, and a majority of
But
the...
why do something separate for them?
I guess 2 reasons. Number one, most of the stretch the mayor spoke to was already in the commercial resort zone, so it's already zoned the area that you see in the blue. So you can see beyond where White Oaks hits Route 3, all of the blue, if that map was bigger, you would see all the way down Endicott Street would be already in that commercial zone. So where this particular property is having some challenges, if you look at the map, is there's areas of green which put it in RR2, and areas of residential, of yellow which put it in residential single. And in order to go through and work to sell what is viewed as to be a commercial type of site, there's mixed zoning there. So we're trying to facilitate this for the owner. Again, that was part of the bigger package that came to you. In my opinion, I don't think this is putting the cart before the horse. This is facilitating the opportunity for the property to be sold, put to a better and higher use, and kind of remove a little bit of the challenge of 3 different zones on it.
Didn't the owner want this done because he wasn't sure of the usage if they changed the zoning? So do we know what his usage is?
He has requested this. So if you look at the email, which is the 3rd page, if you go back down to the middle underneath Mr. Hassler's name and address, you can see that the zoning board in 2007 had voted to approve with conditions the request for the variance from the zoning table for this. And just with folks looking at his property, which is on the market, the concern about how solid is a decision of the planning board in 2007 for a variance versus getting it rezoned into one property classification for zoning purposes makes it a lot neater as far as a legal process going forward. So that's the request. And again, this would go to the planning board. The planning board will be scheduling a public hearing on it, and then a vote, and then it comes back to the council. So there is plenty of time for folks to comment both formally and informally.
Counselor Littman?
I'd like to move that we make that referral.
I'd like to second it.
I'm sorry?
I'd like to second.
Okay, so I'll recognize that in a second, both of you. Let me just also add to the response to Counselor Bear that, assuming this played out now, we would end up rezoning, per a recommendation from the planning board, all of those 2 parcels as commercial resort. So, correct?
So what happens?
All right, so looking down the road, which was your question, if at some point in time, theoretically down the road, we make changes to what happens or can happen in the commercial resort zone, it would then affect this property, as it would affect any property
Okay.
zone commercial resort.
There wouldn't be grandfathered, I mean,
No, if you,
Just so we're all clear, I think that if we make the recommendation to commercial resort, and the planning board adopts it after the hearings and all that process, the entire strip that we would be looking at over those 4 meetings in January and February would all be then entirely commercial resort. I'm right about that.
They are now.
Yeah. No, well, I'm talking about you put this little piece of property into commercial resort, and everything we were looking at, including the rezoned property, would be commercial resort.
I was just
Yeah.
pointing out that down the road, if we do make changes at some point in time to what's allowed or not allowed in commercial resort, it would affect this property as it affects all the other properties than in commercial resort.
So they would be treated the same
Yes,
as the rest.
yes. Okay, so we have a motion on the floor from Counselor Lippman to move to refer the rezoning of parcels belonging to White Oaks Road LLC 1 and 2 to the Planning Board for review and return recommendation. That motion was seconded by Counselor Doyle, was it? Yes. All right, so we have a motion on the floor and seconded to refer this matter to the Planning Board, expecting a return recommendation from them at the appropriate time. Any discussion? All those in favor, please raise a hand. 6 votes in the affirmative. That motion is adopted. Item number 4 under new business is parking garage condition assessment report. And for that, I recognize the city manager.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think as most of you are aware, the city was undertaking some inspections of the parking structure for basically condition and assessment report going forward. We did identify some needed emergency repairs in late September. Those repairs did occur on a temporary basis over the next 4 to maybe 5 weeks. Once they were completed, we continued with the assessment report, and the full report is in front of you this evening. Actually, the narrative is, I've let you all know that there are maps and photographs and different things available, but you've got the narrative and the substance of the report, and you've had it for probably about 10 days now, I believe, or close to that. Just to back up slightly, the ownership of the parking garage is a little bit unique. As you know, there is a land portion, which would be obvious, that is owned privately, along with any of the commercial, retail, office space in there is all owned privately. If you think of the second deck or the first area off the ground, as well as the top deck, which is not covered, the city owns approximately 75 to 80% of both of those decks. So if you've been in the garage and you looked at the stairwell from the southerly end towards the gateway entrance to it, the city owns basically from that stairwell, not including the stairwell and the elevator, back up through the entire remainder of the garage, so it covers the stairwell coming down into the back of the soda shop area and all of those spaces. So it's about a 75 or 80%, 20% ownership there. The city is also fully responsible for maintenance on both sets of ramps up and down to the second level as well as the third level, and that expense was on the city going forward. So when Du Bois and King, doing the assessment of the property, looked at the overall condition to it, this property was built, the garage was built, I believe, in 1974, so a little over 40 years of age with the structure right now. Did identify some deficiencies in some of the steel, some of the decking. Talked about the type of construction is not typically seen this far up in the northeast because of some of the winter elements, and the openness to it does lend a little bit more to some deterioration due to salt and sand and winter weather elements as well. So they looked at a couple of items. Right now, the top deck is not open for parking because we have not invested the needed dollars into the ramps up and down on the top deck. We needed to get the capacity of the parking garage that basically was currently being used, which is the middle deck. We wanted to get that open and then have the discussion about what we were going to do once the complete assessment was done and how we were going to approach it going forward. So right now, about half of the capacity is available, and on any given day, right now, it's probably about 60 to 70% utilized at this point. It does get utilized more heavily in the winter months just because of some people looking to park undercover. We don't allow on-street parking for residents who may park in the downtown or surrounding areas, and those folks, do utilize the parking garage in the evening hours, especially in the winter months, as a means to get their car off the street when they may not have off-street parking. So we did look at a couple of numbers, if you will, from Du Bois and King, and just to kind of put them into the record, if we went in to look at a couple of alternatives, he references it as alternative 2. It's basically just to do the temporary repairs to open up the third deck. We're looking at about $120,000 for that. If we're looking as what being referenced as alternative 1, this would be to basically engineer, design, and oversee the construction and the administration on an engineering component, do the deck replacement where needed, do the beam and column steel repairs where needed, install membrane, replace pavement, do paint removal, as it states in the report. Some of the early paint does have some lead into it, and we had to address that when we did the temporary repairs. So do paint removal and reapplication. The number that's in the report shows it to be at an estimate of about $1.2 million, and again, that is for the publicly owned part. I don't want to speak to the privately owned report. I know they have shared that, but I think I can paraphrase and say there were similar findings. Again, the structure was built, all at the same time. You would expect similar findings for the privately owned portion as well. I haven't seen any numbers or estimates to the cost, but again, if you think that the structure is 75 or 80% owned by the city, and this is our number, you could do a ballpark number. Within the investigation, there was some areas on the parking garage that has some fire suppression material on it that was not fully removed to do, down to steel in every area. So a couple of follow-up questions that I had and some others offered up as well that we did put forward back to the engineer included, what type of quality level or assessment level did you kind of give the unknown area? And they overall indicated they probably would find it to be in the same condition, fair to poor condition, maybe very poor in some areas as the overall structure had. Other questions that were asked, if we went ahead and moved forward with these repairs, what would we anticipate the useful life of the structure, assuming we had routine maintenance going on? And I'll get to the routine maintenance in a minute. The answer back, that would be on the decks, we would expect somewhere between 30 and 40 more years of useful life. So basically getting the other life based out of what we've had for the structure for a little over 40 years right now. With the ramps and the landings, somewhere in the area of 25 to 30 years because, again, of the openness on both sides and exposed to the elements in the sand. We talked about ongoing annual maintenance, whether it was spent yearly or accrued into an account and spent when needed. Between the engineer and our Public Works Director, we identified some tasks that should be done yearly, some that would occur at a 3-year benchmark and some that would occur at a 5-year benchmark. If you blended those together and looked at the cost over a 5-year period, we would anticipate that cost to be about $50,000, so $10,000 a year for budgeting purposes would be what we'd be talking about at this point. I already spoke about the condition of the areas that were not fully accessible, and in my notes to all of you, I gave you a comment from me that said for budgeting purposes, rather than focusing on a $1.2 million number that was in the assessment report, I'm recommending that we be talking about it in a $1.5 million number just for that unknown area and some surprises that you could run across in a 40-year-old structure. So as we run the numbers, I'd rather, again, be more conservative with the number and find out that we didn't have to utilize it all than to be talking about 1.2 and ending up with something a little bit higher than that. I think most folks are aware there are some leaks as the deck on the second level is actually the ceiling of the buildings that make up the ground on the first level. So by doing all of this work, are we going to make it 100% tight and leak-proof? And that answer is it'll improve the amount of leaks tremendously but we would not make a guarantee that it would be 100% leak-proof, and it's not reasonable to do that based on, the structure and how it was designed and the roof integrated into that deck. So those were a few follow-up questions that I shared with all of you at some point last week in advance of tonight's meeting. I've also shared with you, and it's public knowledge, that there is a sale potentially pending on this, and it does hinge on the facility, not only the privately owned piece and how that may be addressed by either the current owner or future owners, but also on what investment, if any, is the city willing to make into, the portion that we own. Before we got these reports, one of the questions I was asked is, well, what's the city going to do? And to me, I said, well, until we get some firm numbers, I don't have a good knowledge base to provide any recommendations. I do know that for new parking facilities in this area, being the state in New England, on average, and again, they can vary a little bit in design and some bells and whistles, but new parking spaces, on average, run around $25,000 to $30,000 a space. Dover literally just opened up a facility the week of Thanksgiving that was constructed over the past year. I believe it's 315 spaces, and it was $11 million. And again, I don't know all the add-ons that may have been in there, but I don't think they were significant. It was a structure in the downtown on a surface lot, and it was in that ballpark. Portsmouth is looking at options for an additional parking garage. Those are the numbers that are being utilized there. So in looking at a repair of $1.5 million into what it generates as a cost per space on the spaces that we will continue to be able to utilize down there, it's significantly less than that $25,000 to $30,000. So that certainly is a factor, and also knowing how many years, I think my thoughts would change drastically if I knew it was a $1.5 million investment and it was only going to get us 10 years versus getting us in the area of 25 to 30 years. So those are just some things I'm just putting out to you right now at the 30,000-foot level, just to kind of frame the discussion going forward. So I think I've probably spoken enough at this point. I'm happy to answer any questions, and I know we've got folks here tonight who have some interest and are looking to speak as well.
I think we're going to want to hear from Genesis here in a minute. Other than bringing this report forward at this point in time, the expediency, if you will, of this is, as I understand it, Genesis Behavioral Health is trying to purchase the building, has an option to purchase the building, and there's a need because of that for some immediate input, if nothing else, I think, as far as Genesis is concerned. But before we get to that, are there any technical questions or whatnot that you'd like to have the manager answer before we get to that? Okay. Ms. Pritchard, I think Maggie Pritchard is here, Executive Director of Genesis Behavioral Health, and if you could welcome, and if you could explain your situation to us, please.
Sure. Okay, so we've been working on looking at this building and its viability for Genesis Behavioral Health for probably over 6 months now. Have a purchase and sale on the property. Own 2 properties right now, one on 111 Church Street and one on North Main Street, that we would put on the market if we were to secure this building. Had already gone through an RFP process, have already gone to the New Hampshire HEFA to get our financing, and were approved for a $5.5 million bond to do so. So we're very interested. We know we fit there. We did an RFP. We have a construction company, an architect. We've done some preliminary plans. And of course, this was Murphy's Law, I guess, on some level. And so we also hired the same King and Du Bois to do our review. We didn't ask for a price, but we know, as Scott said, that it's probably about $250,000. And so we're anxious because we already started down the road, and we have that purchase and sale ends at the end of this month. And we don't want to put more money into the project if it's not going to happen. So it's really a big effort on our part to consolidate our services, to become more efficient, and to have better space than we have now. Any questions?
So did I understand you to say that you don't want to proceed with the purchase of the building unless the city's going to invest the $1.5 million or whatever it amounts to into repairs to the long-term repairs to the parking garage?
Correct. One of the biggest sells for the building for us was being downtown and having parking for both our customers and our employees, and we would not be interested if the city was not going to move forward.
So how many employees would you have in that building, and how many parking spaces would you need for your operation?
At any given time, there's about 100 to 110 people in our building, workers, and then there's all the clients, so.
So you would need 100-plus parking spaces?
Yep.
Okay. So the council is, did you mention numbers earlier? How many parking spaces are in the building?
Yeah, I may not have. I think we're around 180, give or so, on the public ownership, and about
40?
40 something on the
40.
private side.
Yeah.
Well, count I got was 228 spaces total on the second and third floors. Some of those would probably require a small automobile to fit into. And not all of them are currently open, and I have no idea why, whether they're structural issues or whatever it is. Some of them have sawhorses in them.
That was a couple of the areas where there was some more aggressive deterioration, so we've landed a few sawhorses, and we've got a couple of metal plates in a couple of the traveled areas just to help, disperse the weight. But the garage is fully safe for daily use as it is right now, but that's just to err on the side of caution.
But theoretically, 228 spaces on the second and third level, 36 of which, by my count, would be owned by you, and the balance would be owned by the city. So that just puts it in perspective. If there's 228 and you're going to use 100 plus, there's about, theoretically, about 100 left. Any questions for the counselors for Ms. Fisher?
How many spaces did you say you would need?
100.
We use about 100 for our staff. Now, many of our staff are in and out throughout the day. There's probably about 70 that stay in the building all the time, and there's another 30 or 40 that are in and out, going to people's houses, doing home
Is this
visits.
the only building that you've looked at that would?
Oh, my God, no.
to sup-
I've been looking for almost 8 years, so this is not the only building. But this was the one that we liked the best and that we fit the best in, and we thought was the most affordable and reasonable for us.
Just my own personal question here as far as my own thought. If it was at all possible, which I don't even know if it is, would you take the whole building if it was possible for us to sell it?
You mean, would I buy a parking garage?
Yeah. I
Probably.
mean, you're going to use
Right,
most of the spaces.
probably not.
I mean, even if it was, I'm just going to throw it out there, sold for $1.
And the reluctance would be what?
So the reluctance really would be the maintenance, upkeep, and the liability and all of that for, we won't use it on the weekends, we won't be using it in the evenings, it's not,
I mean, in my own opinion, this is the most confusing agreement that the city has, I mean, in this thing. I mean, it is ridiculous. And whoever signed these things way back when, I don't understand them.
We all love to have been there fly on the wall in 1974 when whoever came up with this
thing.
plan.
The engineer.
Anyway, Counselor Bear.
First of all, I don't see there's any way possible that we could responsibly solve this by December 31st. You're giving us 2 weeks. Anything done in haste, I think we've already seen what can happen, and there are a lot of problems. So to give you a guarantee that it's going to happen, I don't think can take place till we've thoroughly vetted this thing and had a lot of input. The other thing that, well, it always disturbs me is you're a nonprofit organization,
correct.
and that means you'd be taking a $1 million plus property off of the tax rolls on top of our having to invest. And to me, that's something that has to be thought about. But
I would be putting 2 properties in the downtown area back on the tax rolls, however.
hopefully.
Yes, right.
I think they've been up for
That's
sale
true.
before.
I've not had them for sale, so we've had them a long time.
I was thinking of, there's going to be a lot of people with solutions and a lot of people with objections. One of the things I was thinking of when Bob mentioned the city selling the parking lot, we could sell it for $1, like we did for the police station, with a proviso that the buyer, perhaps you, would invest in bringing the parking garage up. You'd have the parking garage, some of it would have to be public, I would imagine, and we could use the $1.5 million that we were going to have to invest in repairing and maybe build a second story to the city parking lot. But those are just, as I said, there's so many things to consider. I don't see where this council could promise you that we're going to do this until we've completely vetted this. And if you could get an extension of your option, it would be, helpful.
Sure. I mean, there are time constraints on the bond issue, there are time constraints on the agreement with them, and clearly, it's not necessarily my expectation. I would love it if you just decided and that was that, but I appreciate that this takes a lot of thought and a lot of money, so.
Councilor
Henry?
Lippman.
I do think we probably can give you an indication that we're not about to let the thing collapse and fall in on itself, that would not be responsible, that we've got to find a solution. I guess what Councilor Bear is saying is it takes more than 2 weeks to get there.
Councilor Bounds.
When this contract for purchase and sale was negotiated, did everybody go into it with their eyes wide open as to what the potential liability or condition of the parking garage was?
No, that's why we had the inspection.
Okay. And when the purchase and sale, was the purchase and sale contingent on the inspection?
Yes.
All right. And you now have got the inspection done for your purposes?
We do.
And I'll take the city manager's word that it's not much different than the report, at least the long report that I read with respect to this matter. Does that affect Genesis' position with respect to this building? I mean, I want Genesis to come, I want Genesis to be a part of the downtown if you can do it. But here's, and I think Councilor Lippman is right, it would be irresponsible for us to let it fall down. So we need to do something about that. But here's what the future holds for the city of Laconia. We're going to put in $1.5 million. We're not going to put in 10 and build a new garage. We're going to continue to maintain the rampways. We're going to get 25 or 30 years of life out of it. And we're going to provide you and 70 to 120 folks parking, free parking, for use of the garage during the time that you occupy that space in downtown Laconia. And I assume that if you're purchasing it, you intend to be there for a long time.
Mm-hmm. And I would not be opposed to paying for parking, as we do in the other cities.
No, I get it, but this sort of throws a monkey wrench into everything with respect to what the fair market value of the building is, and all of those different factors. And I'm glad you agree that this is not something we can decide by the crack of dawn on January 1st, 2016. So there's all kinds of problems. What about just ripping it out? Can we do that?
That would be my thought.
The challenge is, as I stated, the deck is the roof of the first floor building, so they're intertwined. It's not a
Is there any way to
single
manage that?
The indications I've got are no, and I think if you got to that point where you were removing the parking structure, it probably almost, behooves for the entire structure to come down, and that goes back to the uniqueness of the ownership of the property, where we don't own the land, and we don't own any of the buildings, but we own 80%, give or take, of the structure. So there's a lot there.
Yeah.
What's the possibility of taking off the third
I got over here first.
I would assume that would definitely be easier. I'm not an engineer, I don't know how it's constructed, but that definitely would be easier than trying to remove the whole thing. But I don't know if that alleviates the problem of the permanent repairs to the ramps and the second deck. You would just have cut your capacity in half at that point.
Okay, we've got three counselors waiting to speak. We'll start with Counselor Hamel.
Okay, thank you. Part of the reason why I'm very reluctant on this right now is obviously what's in this report. Did you read this one?
Yes. I read yours and mine.
Right. And I just want to touch on a few things, if that's okay. It says, "The overall structure of the ramps and landings are in very poor condition. The poor condition is due to severe loss of structural framing and steel deck." Another thing goes on, it says, talking about the decks, "The condition of the top surface of the concrete deck is unknown due to a membrane." So we don't even know what's underneath there. And I pretty much guarantee, once you start, you're going to rip the whole thing out, probably on both levels. The steel deck forms are in poor condition. The deck forms have 100% section loss in approximately 10% of the decking. The decking has essentially no structural capacity in locations of that 100% loss. Approximately 40% of the area, that's the lighting. And then it talks about the beams and columns are in poor condition. It says the ramps are found to be highly susceptible to failure or collapse. Overall, it says the asphalt, this is kind of contradiction, overall asphalt overlay is in fair condition, in many areas poor condition. The general drainage is poor. The deck asphalt overlay is not properly pitched. The condition of the surface of the concrete decks are unknown due to asphalt overlay obscuring the visual observation or testing. So, personally, I think this, the 1.2, 1.5, I think that's really lowballing. I think once we get into that, this is going to be a money pit. And it's whether we want to throw all this money in there for 30 years. You know, the solution isn't good. I don't know. I guess we're almost committed to do it. I don't know, because of the situation where we don't own the whole thing. But that's a lot of money to put into something that, once you get started, I mean, we've been accustomed to fixing things that, going into structures that have a lot of unknowns in what we find. And I think once we get in there and start ripping things apart, we're going to find a lot more bad than we are good.
Counselor Bear is next up.
Further to Bob's point about the cost, I would like to mention that the cost of the recent emergency repairs we just completed was over $71,000, and Du Bois King Engineers was $30,093, almost reaching $102,000 just recently. And over the past 10 years, the cost of repairs to the garage, in addition to this amount I just mentioned, is $371,000. That makes the total cost of repairs in the last 10 years $1.5 million. So, you know, you can just keep pouring millions and millions.
Including the new 1.2 or not?
Yeah. No. I'm not talking about 1.2. I'm talking about the repairs we have made.
Already over $1 million
Yeah,
in 10 years.
$1.5 million.
So it cost us $100,000.
What, you want to
I'm
question my figures?
just looking for clarification. I agree with the 350,000 and the 10s and the 14s and the 100 that we just spent. So I'm just thinking the math somewhere should be just under $500,000 with the figures you have in front of you. The big one was back in '05 or '07 for about 350,000.
350,000 in 2005.
Yep.
13,000 in 2012, and 11,000 in 2014,
Okay.
which was 374,000, right?
Yeah.
And now we have just spent 30,000,
102.
102 total.
So about
the-
470, 480,000.
half a million.
Half a
Yeah,
million.
thank you. I just want to make sure that we've got the right numbers here.
$500,000 in 10 years.
Sorry, thank you.
Anything else? Right now?
No, but I just think that when we talk about cost and we talk about repairs and we're going to have maintenance that, you have to look at everything. And I just think that we need a lot more time. Maybe the Finance Committee should be looking at it, or I don't know. It just seems like we need to do some serious thinking.
Counselor Lippman.
Just big picture stuff here for a minute. One is, we're trying to bring development to the downtown area, the Colonial Theater being one. Trying to bring people to come to the downtown area to use merchants. So I think if you look at every downtown that we would emulate maybe to be as successful as, they have a parking garage as a component of that. And, I'm not arguing that we don't need to take some time to look at this, but I do think the objective needs to be that we can't let the thing go down. We need to develop some additional parking, which we already know in the downtown area is in short supply. We just need to find a way to sort of navigate what's the best way to approach it. But I really think that, from a financing standpoint, I think it would be helpful to know what your deadlines are. And so we have some sense of what pace we need to work at to try to work to.
So I've worked with the seller, and Kevin's here, the realtor, and they've been more than accommodating and understand that we had to push this off. The problem with the bonding is that we have to use it or lose it or reapply by May of this year.
Okay.
So,
May.
Next year.
of next
2006.
year. You're right, this year, May's already gone by. Yep.
Counselor Bounds.
I'm not sure. Can you tell me again what the projected cost for maintenance and repairs once we've completed the 1.5 or 2 million? What the yearly? I know you sent it to me. and
It's 10,000 when you annualize it over a 5-year period, so only a couple thousand a year for routine stuff in years 1 and 2, and then a little bump up in year 3. Year 4 is back to routine, and year 5 is a little bit above and beyond year 3. So when you blend together in a 5-year period, it's $50,000. So if you budgeted $10,000 a year and carried forward what you didn't expend because you knew over a 5-year period you were going to do it, that's what we're looking at. So $10,000 a year for maintenance. That would be things like spot repairs, expansion joints, concrete work if needed, painting steel, any traffic membrane, and then some more extensive work in the every 5-year type of cycle.
Are there any other questions from?
I want to follow up.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I agree with Councilor Lippman in terms of the general approach that we should be doing everything we can within our obligations for some financial responsibility to get people to come to the downtown. But I note that I'm not trying to change the paradigm, but, the other cities that rely on parking and building parking garages, Portsmouth, Concord, they're all fee-based accommodations. You pay for them. So there's a return on the investment. You spend $25 million to build the garage, and you've got a return on that investment. We don't have a return on this investment, and I want to know if there's a way that we as a city and the seller and the buyer can figure out if there's some kind of mutually agreeable way in which we can address the deficiencies that the city finds itself in while still giving everybody a healthy environment downtown, a place to park, a place to shop, develop in accordance with the Colonial and all the other nice stuff that's going on here. I want to know if there's a way that we can collaborate.
Counselor Bolduc.
I guess I don't understand if they're going to want 100 and something parking spaces, what are we going to have for the city people?
they would only be guaranteed the spaces that they own to put signs up, and then, like anything else, it would be a first-come, first-served basis.
Or
So,
they could lease them from the city.
Or they could work an arrangement and say, we want some additional guaranteed
In
spaces.
collaboration.
Yeah, so the only spaces that they would
I love that word.
be guaranteed would be the 18 or so on the second deck and the 18 or so on the third deck. Beyond there, it's a first-come, first-served. So, and I hear exactly what you're saying, so I'm going to tie in maybe two thoughts here with what Councilor Bounds, and then to continue on with your point, Councilor Bolduc, is if you were to charge a fee and gain some revenue in some way, but not charge for surface parking or on-street parking, you know that most people are going to try to find a spot on the street in a surface lot to not have to pay. So in the cities of Concord, Manchester, Portsmouth, there is a paid system on the surface area. The other thing, if you look at what the city supports for parking, the parking garage is one component of it, and I grant you that this 1.5 million is a hefty price tag. But at the same time, we also maintain the surface lot here at City Hall, the one down on Main Street, the on-street parking spaces, so they may not be big cost all at once, but we do maintain with asphalt and striping and lighting and plantings and different things, a lot of surface lots. When I come into City Hall before 8 o'clock in the morning, I park in the garage. At the end of the day or at lunchtime, if I pop out, again, 60 or 70 cars, I can tell you there probably aren't more than 2 or 3 city employees who are parking over there right now. But also, when I walk across the street to the building, this parking lot out here, the surface lot, typically has probably 40 or 50 cars already in it before City Hall is even open, and maybe more than a handful of staff are here in the morning. So we are, if you want to think of it that way, with city parking spaces, supporting a large number of businesses. A large number of postal employees don't park on the postal property, on the federal property. They're utilizing municipal spaces to support a federal operation. So as one, generally speaking, with all that we do for parking, and I grant that this is one big number coming all at once, we do pay for and support a lot of parking anyway in a lot of areas in the city. And I'm just focusing on the downtown right now.
Just gonna, they're not, you say about 18 parking spaces.
Well, 36 are dedicated to
My
them.
goodness, you know,
I think the plus side is you've got that number of employees who are populating the downtown on a Monday through Friday, and we talk about opportunities to support downtown and bring bodies in. I love the church. The church is a great tenant, and you come down here on a Sunday and you see all the cars that are there.
I know, but
That's
stores-
one day a
stores are
week.
closed.
One day a
That's
week
right.
for a couple of hours. This would be a situation where you're talking about
But we're always-
business hours, Monday through Friday, with 70, 80, 90 staff people here 5 days a week. So
where are they gonna park? That's my,
there's a lot to it, but I think we do subsidize a lot of parking right now that takes place in areas other than the garage.
Counselor Hamel, you had a follow-up?
I do. Part of the other thing, too, I mean, we've lived here a long time, and usually all the comments about the parking garages, I won't park there. That's all you ever hear. So we're going to invest, $1 to $2 million into, I don't want to park in there.
But people.
The other thing, too, is looking down the road 10 to 30 years from now, we're not going to be here. So there's going to be another council sitting here that's going to say, what the heck did they do 30 years ago when they invested in this? And now the building's probably, in 30 years, going to have to be torn down one way or the other, because it's not going to last 30 years beyond that, I doubt very much. So the only other thing is, on this here, is if we're going to do it, we need to do it right, completely, so it would last longer than that 30 years. Because if we do a patch job, which a lot of this looks like, you're going to be back in the same thing, maybe even sooner than that. So,
It's not my expectation to do a patch job, and that's where I asked those numbers, and we talked about the decks of 30 to 40 years. I think when you read the report as well, and you talked about some of the issues with the garage, you heard about pigeons roosting and poor lighting. All of those things would be addressed in that $1.5 million. So it's not just do the structure and leave it dark and damp and still less than desirable.
the only way to fix it is put a roof on it. That's the only way to fix it.
Okay, Counselor Doyle hasn't had a chance to speak yet, so we'll go to her next.
Obviously, something has to be done, and as everyone said, we need to gather information and go for that, but we have to fix it. I mean, we can't just let it crumble. We can't just let it get worse. To answer your question about people don't want to park there, if you got 70 to 100 people that are routinely parking in that garage all day long, I think once the garage becomes more active, people will be a little more inclined to want to park there because it'll be populated. It'll have activity, it'll have people in and out. It'll feel safer, for one thing, once you have all that happening. I used to, years and years and years ago in another life, parked in a parking garage, 5-level, 6 levels, whatever it was, and I had an assigned spot, and I paid for that spot. And that was the way the whole garage worked. You wanted an assigned spot, you paid for it, and they actually had small car spots that were less expensive than the bigger car spots. So somebody that drives a little tiny car, like you said, some of those tiny spots, could get a bargain. But yeah.
Counselor Lippman, did you have something further?
No, I just think that, well, yes, I do actually. In terms of the quality of the estimate that we have, in terms of trying to get something more, I know we haven't agreed on any means in terms of how we're going to solve this, but in terms of the quality of the estimate, what degree do we think the 1.5 million or the 1.2 million, whatever base you want to use, what percent probability do we think that's a strong number, and what can we do to perfect that?
I would like to flush that number out a little more, but before we put anything else into it, I wanted to obviously have this conversation and get some guidance. So I think some of the areas that we could do some samplings of the areas behind the fire suppression and get an indication of some spots and then extrapolate that over the area. So again, I've already talked about when asking what number, what grade did you give the areas you couldn't fully assess? And the answer was kind of a fair to poor like the rest of it. That's when I, in my communications to you, said, okay, let's right now stop talking about 1.2 and let's just make it 1.5 for that unknown. When you do look at the breakdown, though, and again, this was based on the $1.2 million number, 120,000 is engineering, so 10% right away is engineering. A part of it, that the making the repairs, was going to be another, $120,000, to do it. So when you break down those components, which are known and open and exposed to us right now, I think that makes the unknown portion that much smaller of the remaining project. But yes, I would want to do a little bit more detailed work on this and try to tighten this number up so that we had a much higher level of confidence.
Counselor Bowens.
I say this somewhat sarcastically, but given that this is not going to present my opportunity, which is just to tear that garage down, I think it does present an opportunity for everybody to come to the table, because the condition of the garage impacts the purchase price, impacts your ability to get out of the contract. We got now a purchase and sale agreement with a condition that nobody really anticipated fully, that has arisen in a very short period of time. Let's go back to October. Bang. And I want to see businesses come downtown. I want to provide the opportunity for businesses to use parking in a resourceful and creative way. I want the opportunity to happen. So I really go back to my original point that, everybody needs to be able to, willing to come to the table, and that includes the city, because we are a player.
Back to Counselor Hamel.
Yeah. I just want to read the first paragraph of this thing here. It says, conceptual costs have been developed for 2 alternatives. Detailed cost estimates were not performed, and conceptual costs provided should be used for budgetary purposes only. The other thing I want in reading this is those decks are the actual ceilings of the businesses underneath. So if you replace the decks, you gotta vacate that whole building up. I mean, I don't know, but and we won't know till we check into it. But I would think
know
that
that
the
either.
decks are probably, if they're leaking.
Can I ask another?
There's a problem.
But
So
I-
if
but
that's
I-
the ceiling,
And I've stated that from the get-go, that is the ceiling. And I agree with you, that these are conceptual numbers for budgetary purposes, and that's why I immediately threw 25% on and said, let's start talking about it being 1.5 and not 1.2.
yeah, well, I
I'll
think
be
probably
brief.
25% is low. Is the
Your crystal ball's
construction
better than
crew at
mine
the-
right now.
The construction crew at the fire station said if we started to do that now, it would be at least 20% more than what we paid for that building, so.
Counselor Bounds?
I just want to ask a question. Do you have, assuming that the parking garage was not an issue, do you have plans for any redesign, substantive redesign for the interior of the building? Of the entire parcel? What are your plans? And do you have those plans in place?
Actually have them in the back of the car, but, so we would use about 26,000 square feet initially, which would be Pat Wood's current office, and then where the church is, all the way back towards the front of Main Street, to house our outpatient offices, children's department, adult services, the business office,
Okay,
administration.
and everything forward of Pat Woods, north of Pat Woods?
So the current tenants would likely stay. It would be our idea. Obviously, the soda shop has to stay. You can't say that in Laconia, right? Absolutely.
You would be the
So,
landlord for the
that's
front
for the
quarter of
five
the building,
offices or
right?
whatever that we have in the front, yeah.
Okay,
All set with me?
thank you.
I got one more.
Do you have a question
I do.
for her?
Well,
Okay,
Can I ask you one
sorry.
more question?
Ms. Pritchard, could you come back? We have another.
Say this goes through. Yes. All right, when are you planning to start remodeling?
So I would have started in February.
Okay.
And so, really, this has thrown quite a wrench into
Okay.
everything.
So
that
the
we're
other
doing.
part of that is, if you go through and spend, what were you looking to spend?
We were going to, 5.5 I got approved for the.
That's for the whole building, buying,
Acquisition
purchasing,
and-
Acquisition and renovation and some contingencies.
So you do all these renovations, and then we find out we have to rip your ceiling off.
Yeah, see, I'm not going to buy the building without you. This is collaboration, yes. That's not going to happen, yeah.
Good word.
Okay?
Okay, thank you. Before, my intent here is to, I know we have a lot of interested people on the subject here tonight, to give people an opportunity to weigh in on this. And Ms. Pritchard is available to come back up if there are questions that anyone else wants to ask her. Before I get to that, a couple of things quickly. One, I had an email today from Randy Eifert, the chairman of the board of the Belknap Economic Development Council, which is now the owner of the Colonial Theater. And he could not be here tonight, but he wanted to weigh in on this issue, and I will not read the entire email, but excerpts from it. BEDC would be willing and able to help in any way going forward. We see adequate and quality parking as an important part of downtown, the Colonial Block redevelopment project. At one time, we were discussing the potential of including an underground parking facility in our project under the current City Hall lot. We still see this as a potential project in the future, which will allow opening up more river frontage, et cetera, et cetera. We would suggest that all options be looked at, including the disposing of the existing structure and looking at a new facility. So that's the input tonight from the Economic Development Council for full exposure, full disclosure, not exposure, I'm sorry. I will say that I'm a director of the Belknap Economic Development Council. And then I would just like to weigh in personally, and all the other counselors have had a chance to weigh in on this tonight, and I will briefly weigh in by saying the following. I don't think we have the option of doing nothing. And I'm not sure sitting here tonight what the something is, but I wanted to pass on to the rest of you what my concern is, or my particular interest in this is. I believe that in order for the downtown redevelopment effort to reach its full potential, started by the Colonial Project, we're going to have to not only look at commercial parking opportunities beyond what exists today, but we're also going to have to look at residential parking opportunities in order to make the turnaround for the residential properties in the downtown area work. And I think that's probably going to take a public-private partnership of some kind in order to provide parking for people who would buy condominiums or rent nice apartments in the downtown area. And as I sit here tonight, I can't see the existing parking garage realistically figuring into that long-term solution. And the most obvious solution to be vetted there would be, what would we do down the road in terms of, that's mentioned in the letter from Randy, would we do in terms of the potential redevelopment for the City Hall parking lot and adding more space there, including covered spaces that could be offered as an amenity to residential units and leased to the owners of those residential units. And what concerns me here, so I see that as an absolute must for the long-term redevelopment of downtown Laconia. And so what concerns me is in the short term, if we put $1.5 million, whatever the number is, into the parking garage, what does that do to the bigger picture long-term in terms of our being able to afford the future expansion of parking in the downtown area? And that's my concern, and I don't have an answer to that tonight. But that's what I'm worried about, is if we put $1.5 million into that old building, we have to do something, and maybe we have to do that. I don't know that that's the conclusion, but I'd really be concerned if we were going to do that and then not be able to take the project or the development of downtown parking further because we spent $1.5 million or $2 million or whatever it is, depending on who's right about that number, into the parking garage. So that's my input for the night on it, and I guess I agree with those who believe that this issue needs to be vetted, because I don't see the parking garage existing in a vacuum. I think it's part of a bigger picture that we've got to be thinking down the road some on. With that said, is there anyone else who's with us tonight who would like tonight to weigh in on this subject? Nobody?
I'm happy as long as she said she ain't gonna kick me out. I'm good to go.
That's all you want to know. Mr. Sawyer?
I'll come forward because someone has to be the pioneer, so if the arrow's in my back, so be it.
Well, there's a pioneer if I ever saw one.
I think,
You might know what happened in 1974.
well, I just come home from a tour of duty in the Army, and the decisions had all been made by the time I had arrived. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
My concern is that we move forward on this in some reasonable fashion, because not only is the garage going to be used for Genesis, if hopefully they go forward, but it's currently being used, and I know people say they're not going to park there. I happen to be parked there today, and I'm there most days. And Scott, what are there, 75 to 100 cars in there most of the time? And so there are a lot of people that are using it. I know our major tenant, which is Empire Beauty School, has their students park in there. And I don't know where their students are going to park. We had some issues when the garage was closed as to where they're going to park. I also think if we're going to move forward in some reasonable fashion for the theater, I think, and we are going to go forward with the garage, we should give some thought, which we've been thinking about ever since it's been built, about the idea of an exterior glass stairwell. Because you're going to have people going to the theater, and it's going to be at night, and I think it would make the garage a much more friendly place if someone were to enter a lighted stairwell. I also don't know whether that needs to, if you add a stairwell, whether you need to add an elevator. There is not a public elevator in the building. I think it's important, and I know $1 million sounds like a lot of money, but $7 to $10 million for another garage Sounds like a lot more. And we may need, if downtown is going to be as successful as we all hope it will be, we may need to do both. And so I'm here as an advocate for moving forward, and moving forward in a somewhat timely fashion. I know we can talk about how nice things would be if something else was going to be built. We just have been through 18 months of bridge construction. And I spent a lot of time talking with a lot of tenants, how lovely this is going to be when it's done. And there are people who really struggled. So there is that time frame that we have to address. And so I just wanted to open it up in that kind of a fashion. I also think that the city, regardless of how they got to this position, has an obligation, I don't know how you would label that obligation, to maintain the garage. And I agree with everyone here who has said we can't do nothing. So I ask that it get on the fast track of having something done, because we have a potential significant business that would be coming in that's going to be spending millions of dollars in improving the building and improving the neighborhood. I'm willing to answer any questions. I'm not sure I have any answers, but I'm willing to take a question if someone has one. Okay, thank you for listening.
Thank you. Anyone else like to speak tonight? Mr. Wood?
Where's he going?
Must be retiring, I don't know.
Patrick Wood, live at 717 Shore Drive, and have been an occupant of that building for the last 8.5 years. We just recently did move to a different location, but I am quite familiar with it. And I parked in the parking garage every day for the last 8.5 years, almost every day. A couple of days off once in a while, but most of the time. To me, it's very important that we look at this as an opportunity. And I understand that there are difficulties here with the building, but they're not insurmountable. I think Mr. Sawyer has talked about two opportunities. One, the outside stairwell. The second is the elevator. But the most important thing about this is we're putting a piece of property to use for an extended period of time in a manner that's going to bring a lot of people downtown for 5 days, maybe 6 days a week. And those people are going to walk around downtown. They're going to go to the stores, they're going to go to the restaurants. That is going to be an economic enhancement to a degree that we have not seen since that building was built. It has never been fully occupied. Right now, there are 2 empty spaces. I'm sorry, one of them was mine. But there is 1 empty space, and it's been empty for a long period of time. The church has been there now for a couple of years, but as the city manager indicated, they don't bring in 75 to 100 people a day during the week. They're great on the weekend, and we know that the soda shop likes having them there. But I'll tell you that the soda shop would much prefer to have those 70 people coming to his place for lunch or breakfast or an early dinner than having 150 or 200 people on a Sunday. We need the long-term economic boost that this is going to give us. I think we need to look at it as we did when we opened up that bridge. We realized, whoa, there were things that we didn't expect. Yes, we're going to find those. But we saw it as an opportunity, and you all saw it as an opportunity to do something special, and we built Gateway Park. Let's do the same thing here. Let's put the outside stairwell on, let's put an elevator in, let's make the lighting more attractive. We can do this. We've done it before, we know how to do it, Let's take the positive approach. This is an opportunity, and let's do it. So I'm all in favor, and I think we should move it as quickly as we can because it's important to all of us as a community. So, thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Clement?
Warren Clement, Old North Main Street. If any other community at Genesis come in and say, we want to spend $5.5 million in your community and bring 110 employees in who will bring probably another 30 or 40 clients in a day, you'd be begging them to come. I don't think we're begging, and you don't have to beg. They're ready to come. If we could fill up all of the stores that are empty downtown, you wouldn't have 110 employees. You'd probably have 30. So here's your opportunity to get 110 employees and probably fill the other stores with another 30. Now you get 140. You're going to spend $15 million to renovate a theater and then tell them, well, you can park at the community college and maybe we'll run a bus in for you. You've got the space for it. And it's $100.5 million, which is real money. But if you sit about this and talk about it and agonize about it, they may be gone. And like I said, lots of communities would beg. So I'd say schedule a special meeting just to talk about this, figure out how you're going to fund it, and move ahead. Your idea of them buying the parking garage and doing the whole thing, where do the people park now? Because they own a garage. The gate goes up. I don't say that they do it, but why would they let the general public come into their building and have the liability, have the maintenance, and have everything else? That was the idea of when I did this in 1974. From 1969 to 74, a whole bunch of you were living here and you let it happen. Now you got to go fix it. But I would strongly recommend that you get this done. Thank you.
I didn't let it happen. I wasn't old enough. I wasn't old
Yes, sir.
enough to vote.
I'm Greg Butler. I'm the new pastor at Grace Capital. And we bring in...
Come up to the microphone, please.
We have 400-plus people every Sunday, plus throughout the week we have people coming, and when we use the parking garage. And I just had a thought. I'm sitting there, and what was the quote per parking space in Dover that you said?
It was an $11 million project, and I think it was 315 spaces, and I don't know if there might have been a few add-ons, but I think ballpark, it's a fairly quality, brand-new, obviously,
So,
construction.
but pretty high per parking spot. So if you compare price per parking spot, if we actually get this up and running, it's cheap in comparison, correct?
I wouldn't use the word cheap, but it's less expensive.
Yeah, a lot less, but a lot less expensive though, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, a lot. And so I think in terms of vision casting for the city, and in the expectation, we believe and we hope that the city is going to thrive, correct? I mean, otherwise we wouldn't be doing all this. So we'll need the parking, right? And so I think that to me, it makes sense that if you do it well, and you invest the money, and then you have all that parking, and then figure out a way to have the parking pay for itself. That's my other thought, which I think you guys are very brilliant for things like that, so figure that out. Yeah, that's it.
Yes, sir.
My name is Daniel DeSangro. I own the property. Since I took the property over, I think I've surrounded myself with a pretty good team. Weeks Realty, Kevin Sullivan, Warren Clement, Robert Sawyer from Sawyer's Jewelers managed the property for me for a couple years. Sinclair Construction. Lot of issues with the building. Put the EFS front on there, along with Robert Sawyer, paid for the architecture of the park, correct, Robert?
You and I paid.
That's what I said, you and I.
Part of it, yes.
Paid for the park. Try to make it more appealing work with Paul Moynihan, Kevin from Parks and Rec. Done a lot of work. You guys are talking about tearing it down, tearing the levels off. It's hurting me as a property owner. Some of the issues with Patrick Wood, who I worked well with also, the problems with the water, woods over Manhattan, these are all issues with the garage. Snow piling up, pushing snow banks 15 feet high up on the top level. It's hurting all the businesses, the soda shop, So I think tearing it down is not an issue, but you're gonna have another issue if you don't do the repairs. Now I'm down there. What are you gonna do about me? You can't just not do anything. So those are just some of my thoughts. I can't say anything else that anybody else hasn't said tonight, but let's do something and quickly. I mean, we have to do something.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
To paraphrase a little bit what Counselor Hamel asked earlier, would you buy the garage from the city?
I was hoping the garage would buy my property. The city would buy my property, I mean. I'm hoping they buy me out. It's hard to manage from Boston. This was part of a settlement.
But I mean, would it make it cleaner if you owned for $1 if you owned the garage?
I wish I had $1.5 million to fix it, but I don't. And right now, it's hurting businesses. When you come in and I understand it's an emergency and no one wants to see anybody get hurt, and you have to close a ramp, and no one can park, and garbage can't get removed, and my tenants can't park there. So I'm willing to sit at the table, but we need to move quickly as well. I pay a lot of taxes, and it just keeps going up.
Well,
And
that's my question. Are you willing to sit at the table to see if we can figure out a solution with this? Because it's your issue, it's Genesis' issue, and it's the city's issue. I think that is plain as day. It's everybody's best interest to resolve this in a way that people can agree on that's going to provide a real answer to this. So, you don't have to answer me. You can.
I'm here. I mean, I'm obviously, I'm concerned for myself and for everybody else, so I can't say that of course I would.
Okay.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
My name's Mike Susi. I'm currently the new owner of the soda shop. I've lived in this town for 35 some odd years, seen it do this, seen it do that, seen what the old downtown used to be like. I think that with the investment that this city just made, granted part of it was with a grant, but I know some of it came from the money to redo the bridges and the front areas to get into downtown. I think the best option for everybody, city councilors, downtown businesses, the rest of Laconia, is you got a great gateway into downtown. Why stop at the bridge and the park? Help everybody else out. We're gonna get a great line going. Awakenings came in, Colonial's getting done, Holy Grail's here, the local, the strip right through downtown is coming. Polish and proper, Bree does a great job down there. People wanna come downtown. Let's not put lipstick on a pig, which seems to be what we just did to fix it temporarily. Let's all work together, get it looking good. The bridge looks fantastic, the park looks fantastic. I just don't see why we can't come to some kind of solution to make everything look good and want people to come downtown. We fix the parking garage up, and I'm not just the only one that has this problem. The homeless, get them out of there. Part of that, cleaning up the parking garage, getting that issue taken care of, is gonna want to make more people park down there, bring more people downtown, people coming to the Colonial. I remember going to the Colonial when I was a kid. Video Choice, movie theater, way to get dropped off. I was a kid. I couldn't drive, but come down now, see a play, yeah, you're gonna have to park at the parking garage. Let's get it all cleaned up. Clean it up, do whatever we can, work together. Just my opinion. Thanks.
Thank you.
I hate speaking in public.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
My name's Saint. I own Sinclair Construction, and I'm willing to bet I've got more time crawling through the ceilings of that building than anyone else here. I want to put forth to you a comment that I think's missing in that report, and I've read that report. 40 years under New Hampshire weather is not enough to justify the condition that that's deteriorated to. And everybody's ignoring how it got there. It's just brushed off, it's New Hampshire weather. Well, we all age in New Hampshire weather, no different than people in Mass. There's been two big neglects on that parking garage. It came on the part of the town. One, at some point, asphalting the decks was thought to be a good idea. And what you have in there is there's insulation, a metal deck, a membrane, and concrete. They went in and added a permeable asphalt covering that allowed water to get down and get trapped between the concrete and the asphalt. And I think any structural engineer worth his salt will tell you that has a lot to do with the deterioration of the concrete. The second issue that's happened over time, and I've been here 25 years working on that building, they used to throw the snow off of that building. At the top of the ramps, there's a gate that opens up for them to push it off. And about 12 years, 13 years ago, they stopped doing it. Once they stopped doing it, they started piling snow 12, 13, 14 feet up there. And snow is water, and anybody that's hit the water surface at the wrong angle knows that water's heavy. That had a lot to do with it. And there's probably other stuff I don't know about that's worked on it. So if you're going to put whatever you're going to put into it, and you want to make sure you're going to get your 40 years out of it, you better look at how you're going to maintain it. Because just leaving snow on the third deck ain't going to work. Leaving salt draining off the cars sitting in puddles of snow isn't going to work. It's just something I think you should think about. And the only other comment I had to is the lovely lady from Genesis sat here, and you almost chastised her about using the parking garage once the town fixed it, which is what it's intended for. But not once did she reiterate to you that her purchase and sales agreement increased by $250,000. And at night and weekends, the citizens are going to be using what part of the garage she pays for. It almost makes me wonder if the town shouldn't pay for that.
May I ask you a question?
Sure.
Before you step down?
Yep.
Thank you for coming forward. This is interesting. So you're saying the asphalt on the second and third deck is permeable?
Of course, water goes through asphalt. It's a petroleum byproduct. And then once underneath it, the water hits, oil. That's what asphalt is, an oil. So it sticks between the asphalt and the concrete. And any salt in the water is suspended in the water. And we all know that salt eats concrete, which is why you use calcium chloride, not salt, to do your walkways.
All right, so would you have an opinion to Counselor Hamill's point earlier? If we strip the asphalt off those decks, what kind of condition would the decks be likely in at this point?
More than likely, you probably are going to find that any low-lying areas are going to have the deterioration of the concrete. But as far as having to close the businesses down, you shouldn't have to. They're all off at the pitched end of the, what would that be, west side of the building? And the membrane over there shouldn't be in that bad a shape. I've cut through the floor systems on the south side and found the rubber membranes intact, but the seams coming apart. So if they got to the membrane and just had to seal it, you're talking 2 or 3 days, and you're not going to endanger the businesses.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, I guess the question is back to council then, is what would the council like to do in terms of proceeding with the decision-making process in this, with this issue? Councilor Littman?
Well, I think a few things. First, I'd like to see us perfect what the estimate is, and then I think the points made about, if we're going to try to get 30 or 40 years out of it, there's some improvements that could be made, such as the outside stairwell that is currently one of the things that keeps people from using it, fearful of going up the stairwell, and that's sort of enclosed, encased. So let's try to get a better sense of what we're dealing with. I think then I think we also need to I think probably either refer it to a committee if it's finance or land and buildings. I'm not, and then I think we need to bring together the stakeholders once we have some more facts about what we're up against and what it takes to do it right. Figure out what might be some potential solutions that are partnerships.
I mean, I would certainly agree, Counselor, that one of the key things that I've honed in on tonight that's been said, and thanks for all the public input, is whether or not we just fix it structurally to, in effect, get it back to, like, you know, having your car repaired, and when it's repaired, you've got the same car you had last time, it's just running now as opposed to not running. Or should we look at a bigger picture and find out how much it's going to cost to really spruce the garage up with new amenities to make it a more attractive facility that's been suggested? You know, whether we replace both stairwells or one stairwell or add an elevator, glass I heard mentioned a couple times, to make the building more, I mean, it sounds to me like, you know, that there's another alternative on the table here. It's been put on the table tonight, and that is considerably upping the ante, so to speak, in terms of improving it as an amenity.
And in that respect, people may want to partner with it differently if it's going to produce a different value. I think your point earlier, too, about also some thinking about what strategically more we can do in the parking arena, again, in partnership with others. If, you know, we're trying to develop some, you know, it's great to have businesses downtown, but also to increase the number of people living in the downtown area will also help with the development. So to think a little bit about that, but you know, I think if Belknap Economic Development has an interest in it, that they'd be a good stakeholder. But I think there are a number of different stakeholders. But we have to be dealing with some better facts to sort of strategize on that.
Councilor Hamel, would you be agreeable to having this referred to the Lands and Buildings Committee for further study?
Yep.
That seems like a reasonable approach to me. We've talked about several information gathering and stakeholder issues tonight that we could get involved for that. So anybody else have any input on that? That seems to be a reasonable short-term solution to me, to just refer this to Land and Buildings and have that committee work and gather stakeholders and whatnot to the extent you're talking about, Councilor Bounds.
This is an opportunity for what you described as a public-private partnership to solve a problem downtown.
Yep.
And that's what we should be doing. So
Motion be in order to refer this matter to the Lands and Buildings Committee for further study. Councilor Levin, make that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Seconded by Councilor Bounds. Any further discussion tonight? All in favor of that motion, please raise a hand. We have 6 votes in the affirmative, and that matter is now on the agenda for the Land and Buildings Committee, and I will leave it short-term here to Councilor Hamel, who is chairman of that committee, and the city manager to begin working up an agenda and to expedite this matter to the extent possible.
keep me in the loop, will you?
Give me a time frame on that?
I'm sorry?
Do we have a time frame on that? What kind of time are you looking at?
Well, I just asked Councilor Hamel as chairman of that committee to expedite it. Now, obviously, we have the holidays upon us, but I'm guessing that we could pull together certainly a stakeholders meeting within the month, would you not think?
Oh, yes, definitely.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Is that specific enough for you, or are you?
End of January, pretty much? You're saying after the
I'd
holidays,
say,
a month?
By the middle of January?
Middle of January?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
It would seem to
Councilor
me,
Littman?
it would seem to me it would take 90 to 120 days to complete the picture in a thorough fashion, which I think would allow us to fit the time frame that.
Yeah, I think reasonably, I mean, given that there's probably going to be more estimates that need gathering and vetting and whatnot, that's, when all is said and done, that's probably not unreasonable to think that it would probably take 90 to 120 days to complete the whole process.
What about the bond issue you were talking about?
I think that fits within their.
May. May is your date.
She said May was her deadline for take it or leave it in terms of the grant money, yes.
Get us done at least.
Anything else? Okay, thank you all for attending. I know most of you who are left in the audience tonight were here for that purpose, and we'll keep everyone in the loop in terms of where this is going and what time and when the committee meeting will be, once that's organized. Sorry, do you have a question?
When it comes to bonding.
TIF Advisory Committee is meeting tomorrow morning. Should we incorporate some of these issues into that discussion tomorrow as well?
You have to be bonded through TIF.
Sure.
It's the only way we can
All right, we shall do that. Thank you.
But that's going to take a chunk of it.
Waco.
Yeah.
Bonding through the city.
Okay, we have no unfinished business to tackle tonight. We do have, back to the council here, a nomination tonight, and that is the reappointment of Kevin Dunleavy to the WOW Trail Maintenance Advisory Committee. This is a council appointment, and a motion would be in order to make that appointment.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Counselor Bullock, second by Counselor Bear. Any discussion? Oh, there's the applicant right there. Wow.
Oh.
You've been waiting patiently
He showed
all
up
this
to defend
time.
himself.
She had a speech. All right,
hear
anybody
the
want to
speech
listen
that-
to that speech?
I do want to hear that.
No.
No, you don't.
All those in favor of appointing Mr. Dunleavy to the WOW Trail Maintenance Advisory Committee, please raise a hand. We have 6 votes in the affirmative, and that you'll have to save the speech for another day. Okay. Council comments. Any council comments tonight? Councilor Bounds.
You know, I have been paying attention to...
Good.
About time.
Ooh, you're so kind, Brenda.
I couldn't help it.
I have been paying attention to the controversy and the talks that have recently gone on regarding climate change and the talks in Paris. I was fascinated that there were lots of local representatives from many countries, including the United States, the city of Atlanta. And I think we ought to consider, this council ought to consider adopting a climate change policy. Because it makes sense.
It's way above my pay grade.
Heck, we want to do that.
Well, so far, you're on it.
So I got 2 say no.
I think the one they got's ridiculous. How's that?
What, you're a climate change denier?
Stop
Is that what you are?
If you don't take in oxygen, you'll help everything.
It's the science. If the science is in, Bob. Number one, we all know the Earth is heating up. We know that. And number 2, if you pay attention to the science, you know that humankind is causing it. And if we don't do something, we're going to send ourselves to hell and damnation.
We're already
It's just as true.
I don't think we'll live that long.
We're already into hell and
Your
damnation.
grandchildren will.
Okay.
Oh, yes, they will.
Counselor Bounds, you may, at the appropriate time, put a resolution on the council agenda, and we can see what happens.
Okay.
Okay?
Well, I just thought I'd find out what kind of a frosty reception
Yeah.
I get.
Because of that
It's
climate
pretty
change.
chilly in here. isn't it?
Because, you know, the year is 2015, and it's not 1980, 1990, or even 2000. Step into the light.
All right, any other council comments? Counselor Bolduc.
Not that it hasn't
Go for
already
Bernie,
been,
he'll help you.
not that it hasn't been mentioned tonight
Oh, shh.
several times, but I just want to thank everyone that helped with Christmas Village. And I saw a lot of smiles on these kids' faces and the parents, so it was another successful year. And you don't know how fast a year goes until you get onto one of these committees. Because the first thing you know, we're going to be back there hammering and hauling stuff in.
You guys better get back there this weekend and start getting preparing for next year.
But anyway, it was,
Thought I heard Mr. Dunleavy say you could have the place for the whole year. Isn't that what you said?
That would be nice.
yeah, that certainly would. We wouldn't have to tear it down and put it back up. But anyway, everybody that I saw go through it, and I see them right from the beginning, and they're very happy and having a lot of fun. So we'll do it as long as we're still breathing, I guess. But
Okay, good. Anyone else? Okay, I need to advise the council that we do have a need for a non-public session tonight. And let me find the right. Okay, so I need a motion to go into non-public session under RSA 91A:3, paragraph 2, regarding item A, the dismissal, promotion, or compensation of any public employee. Would someone please make that
So
motion? Moved by Counselor Bear, seconded by Counselor Bolduc. Any discussion of that motion? We need to have a record vote on that, so would the clerk please call the roll?
Yes.
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 Councilor Bear?
Yes.
Councilor Hamel?
Yes.
Councilor Bowler?
yes.
And Mayor Edward England?
Yes. All right, for the record, I will note that we will not be taking any public action after this meeting, nor will we require any staff to remain for this meeting, so everyone but the 7 members of council is
7?
free to leave.
Well, out in the hallway, I don't know if the stairway must be broke down.